Hello and a warm welcome to Tata Literature Live, the Mumbai International Lit Fest, co-sponsored by Tata Steel and Tata Projects and powered by Godrej. This session is presented by Prime Securities. There will be a short Q&A at the end of the session, so please do send in your questions in the comments section of the platform that you are viewing from. India's banking sector has time and again appeared under the spotlight as public trust has been shaken by bank failures, outright fraud, bad loans piling up, and government mismanagement of the crisis. In his latest book, Pandemonium, The Great Indian Banking Tragedy, which won him the KLF Business Book of the Year award, business columnist and best-selling author Tamal Bandyopadhyay creates a bird's-eye view on Indian banking, its fundamental flaws, and contemporary India's challenges and economic potential. The book has been shortlisted for the Tata Literature Live Business Book of the Year Award 2021. Named by LinkedIn as one of the most influential voices in India in 2019, Mr. Bandyopadhyay will be in conversation with entrepreneur and author Shinjini Kumar. After an illustrious career in banking and finance with RBI, PwC, Paytm, and Citi, entrepreneur and author Shinjini Kumar's dream of changing the way women buy and use financial products led her to create her own startup, Salt. Incidentally, according to the money personality test I took on Salt, I am a discerning donut. You can discover your money personality type too. But first, let's begin with checks and balances. Over to Shinjini Kumar and Tamal Bandyopadhyay.
I thought I'd unmuted, but then I had been muted again. Okay, hi, good morning, everyone. And I'm really happy to be here today talking to Tamal about this very important book, which I hope you have already bought. If not, then I suggest that you should buy it and read it. It's a book of great relevance. But before I start my conversation with Tamal, I'm going to start by remembering Anil Dharkar, very dear friend, and the person because of whom my association with Tata Lit Live started. Anil has been a personal friend and in many ways a mentor. I'm really missing him today. I wanted to start out, Tamal, without much ado, asking you a question about, and we will come back to talking more about, Anil and our common background. But just tell me, why are there such few books on banking? I mean, it's something which affects all of us, not just because we all need a bank account and banking services, but also because what banks do affect us, our country, our economy, our politics. But why is it that there is such little writing on it?
Thanks, Shinjini. I think banking is boring. That's the most important part. And if you ask bankers, the more boring the banker is, the more successful the bank is. And those who actually look for much excitement in banking, I'm talking about the banking professionals, they get into a mess, most of them. So that's now how it's a big challenge. How do you make a boring industry, boring subject interesting? So in that case, it becomes only event based. I think globally also, you get some personal finance book, where to invest, how to do your money. But banking per se, if you go beyond the academic world, in the so-called non-fictions book, not too many. But whenever the bankers are in the news or the banking industry in the news, for instance, you look it up on the internet, how many books came up post Lehman crisis. I don't want to reel out their names, wasting our time. So it's very even. In India, for instance, after the Yes Bank crisis, I dealt with it extensively, one full chapter in this book. But there are at least two books that have come out on the Yes Bank and Rana Kapoor. So I think by and large, as I say, it's a boring subject. It's all SRR, SLR, CRR, and LCR. How do you make it interesting? Yes, it affects all our lives, all of us, our lives. But writing on it and making it for the masses, you need some masala, to be crude, to crudely putting it. So whenever there's an episode, be it personality driven or entity driven, books do come up.
So in the last decade, I should say that bankers have actually, unfortunately, made it very interesting, right? They say, may you live in interesting times. So I think we have lived in banking-wise interesting times in India. And there are places in your book where you talk about that parallel between the global frauds and Indian frauds. So I'm going to dive right into that and ask you this question about, because when you talk about, PN, so guys, just for you to know, whoever doesn't know enough about me, because I was just described as a founder and an author, which I'm of very little. I barely write some short stories and nothing more than that. But I have been at the Reserve Bank of India for 17 years, and I've worked at a bank. So, so just to let you know, I found this book immensely interesting, not just because it has a chapter on Yes Bank and on various interesting bankers, but also because it goes very in depth into understanding what causes this particular malaise that we have suffered from. You see the tip of the iceberg when you read the news about, money being siphoned off or PNB or what is happening to banks. But in the book, Tamal goes into a great deal of research and describing the causes as well as sometimes the what can be done about it. So Tamal, just tell us a little bit about when you compare Shetty with Leeson, and you say, Shetty's motives were not so big, like, he wasn't doing this multi-million-dollar hiding of fraud with some sort of egoistic intent, or so how do you think this is different in India, this whole scenario of process lapse, fraud, negligence, whatever you may call it, but sometimes you say it's not criminal intent, but it's negligence. Like, how would you describe this as being different from when we see in the West this whole obsession for process, and yet you have this major frauds that just end up happening, like Nick Leeson that you talked about?
Yeah, actually, you have asked me too many questions, so let me try to answer in my own way. The fundamental difference between Gokul Sethi is a very I think is from the lowest. He's the second. He just got only one. He just took only one promotion in his life. He was a senior manager kind of thing. Okay, he's a clerk, whatever it is. He refused promotion. He refused transfer. The basic difference between Nick Leeson and Gokul Sethi is this: Nick Leeson was making money in the derivative for the bank. And 1995 he got into a big mess and all. I mean, he was making money, and it was good, the going was good, and then he became a victim of greed. Okay, and when you talk about victim of greed, it's a multi-million dollars or more than that, running into billions for the bank, for himself, because the more you earn, the more you get bonus, so on and so forth and all. But Gokul Sethi, I'm not getting into the larger picture of why this rot has set in, but Gokul Sethi is a very different character. Gokul Sethi was living in Goregaon, a Mumbai, western suburb of Mumbai. He bought a place of 1400 square feet, which is pretty good by Bombay standard, Mumbai standard, but it's in the western suburb. In 2005, it didn't even cost him a crore. He, till recently, meaning till this crisis broke out in 2018, he was actually driving a Wagoner, and later he bought a City, okay, Honda City. So it's a very modest car, low-end car actually, and then he upgraded himself to Honda City, and he was most of the day traveling by train and getting into an auto and going home in the evening. So Honda City was not he was driving down to his office. So that's the nature of Gokul Sethi. Where was he working? He was a lowly positioned banker, but in a very critical position in the Brady House branch on Hahnemann Circle, which is probably 50 meters away from India's central bank. I had been there while researching on the book. It's just like you take a flight of stairs and you get into the first floor of this branch, and there Gokul Sethi was operating, and nobody knew what was he doing. And he was the man of Nirav Modi. He was bypassing SWIFT and getting all this so-called LOU done, etc., etc. And he was also making it sure that the bank system did not catch it. So the modus operandi was very different. And also, Gokul Sethi was, of course, greedy and he was well looked after. But I don't know what kind of, how much is worth. I mean, going by the, at least till the time arrested, his worth would be a few hundred, probably a couple of crores. I mean, I don't know the money, unless he has stashed money overseas or something. But his, as I said, a house which was less than a 1 crore that he bought, and a Honda City and a Wagner. That was the thing. So why did he do this? That's the basic question. Whereas Nick Leeson was doing for the bank and he got greedy and he was getting fat bonuses, so on and so forth. But here is one fellow who is actually not single-handedly, because there are lots of, as you talk about checks and balances, it all missed it. But he was the critical person in the entire PNB fiasco, which is $1.8 billion. At that time, that kind of exchange rate and all. But did he make much money for himself? I'm not very sure. So why did he do it? I don't know. But I think here probably the key difference is people sell their soul for very small price.
It's I'm amazed at how I asked you many questions, but you went right to the heart of the matter, which is also how the book is. So for readers, I think one thing that really drew me to understanding this was Tamal's the choice of the title. So he talks about the tragedy, and then as you read through the book, he talks about, you know, hamartia, your fatal flaw, the tragic hero, the purgatory, how banks will go through that. So I wanted to ask you, Tamal, where does that come from? Like for a journalist, a finance journalist and a banker, where does all this literary echo and, you know, sort of this ability to go down to that person come from?
No, it's not a secret. Actually, I'm pretty illiterate about finance and banking and economics because I don't have any academic background. I'm a student of English literature, so I read Shakespeare, Keats, Byron, Milton. So probably that works at the background. But when I took up the project, and I must thank the publisher also, the idea came from Raleigh Books. So they told me, why don't you take a big picture look at this? So that's how I got into it. And then I found the different characters, and then I found all those issues. You know, there are, yes, of course, lack of efficiency, inability to manage risk, pressure from different quarters, etc., etc. But then there are also characters who was so confident, so proud of themselves. That's what I call hamartia. They are bound to fall. So that's you know, I was just like trying to get a ringside view of the drama that had unfolded in the second half of the last century, between 2015 and 2020, just before COVID. So 2015, Raghuram Rajan took the plunge, or rather, you know, he started this AQR, asset quality review, first of its kind anywhere in the world, probably, where he says that I don't trust your balance sheets. My guys need to go and check it out. That's how it started. And then I got into the different characters, and I found that it's really a tragedy. I mean, it's a tragedy for the banking system. It's tragedy for you and me, the taxpayers. It's tragedy for the nation. And of course, as an afterthought, it could have been a comedy also, Great Indian Banking Comedy, because some of the things are very comic. If you go through that, our inability to catch them faster, etc., etc. I found it very comical. But other part of the book is called Pandemonium. You know, that's the main title is Pandemonium. So Pandemonium, if you see the Milton's Paradise Lost spoke about that. Now, any pandemonium is chaos, but very short-lived chaos. Like in Parliament session, you see pandemonium on newspaper headlines. In a football ground in US, you found pandemonium among the supporters fight, etc., etc. But here, pandemonium actually continued for long. And this also this also encouraged me to think it's just between the fire in Hindu mythology, the fight between the Devas and the Asuras. And you know that Asuras won, and then it started Samudra Manthan. And then you get the poison, halahal, and Shiva actually drank the halahal, and he became Neelkantha. Now, while writing the book, I was in search for the Shiva of Indian finance system. who will drink the halal? The halal is the poison out of these bad loans. Now you and me, the tax-paying Indians have been, all of us are Nilkantha over a period of time. We are paying the tax, and this tax has been used to recapitalize the banks year after year after year. It's running into trillions of rupees. Book has really described that. So my search was also, when do you get the Shiva who will consume the halal become Nilkantha? And I think by announcing 2 banks will be privatized in the budget, government also in search of that.
Very, very fair, very interesting analogy. In fact, I wanted to ask you that question on who is the Shiva in this story. And I like what you say, that as taxpayers, we all of it are. And it's not just even because of capitalization of the banks. It's also because of the fact that banks eventually do have deposits from us. Our returns are affected when the banking system goes bad and loans are not available to people. In fact, consumer banking has had it has had a revival in a way because corporate banks, went through this whole churn. But also, we will continue to see the shake up, and that's where you talk about. So the tremors that have happened because of this Samudra Manthan that you talk about are not going to die down soon. It's still work in motion that will happen. So I wanted to ask you, you've had extensive conversations while you were writing this book with a lot of people that were in positions at that point of time to sort of observe it from the side or have a sense. Many places you write about, everybody knew it, but nobody was doing anything. There are many places where you talk about everyone had a doubt about this, or everyone suspected the character of somebody, or everyone thought so-and-so was not living, or whatever, doing the thing that was the correct thing to do. Many places you write about that. What is it that counts? Did you get an insight from talking to people about what makes for that tolerance, that place that I'm sitting in a fiduciary responsibility? Whether we are talking about auditors, whether we are talking about rating agencies, whether we are talking about regulators, what makes for that the fact that we will not take action until it blows up? What's that thing?
Yeah, there are many constituencies, but here I think the primarily we probably are hinting at, not saying in as many words, the regulators' patience. That's the thing.
Even auditors, board members. You've been on a board, Tamal. So it's not just one party.
Auditors are not. It's a question of patience. Also in the same league, Auditors are in the same league. I refuse to believe the auditors did not know. They clutch onto this. And same with the raters in most of the cases. Compromise is too strong a word, but there is sort of understanding. If you want me to be politically correct or diplomatic, probably there's an understanding. And that's what SEBI pulled up the rating agencies. You know how the CEOs had to go with the rating agencies because of laxity and other things, for multiple things. Like suddenly if a triple rated company got down to, completely there are some 10, 15, 20 notches down, your money is gone, my money is gone. Now, how can that be overnight? So certainly the raters were, I refuse to believe they are only negligent. There are more to it. Similarly, as far as the audit firms are concerned, also there is not negligence alone. I think more to it. There's sort of understanding. So that probably leads us to where does the buck stop? The central bank, Reserve Bank of India, is it too patient? If you ask me, probably it is, because what happens is this: Reserve Bank of India, and I don't know, globally central banks, then they don't bother about inefficiency. If I'm a CEO and I'm pretty inefficient, I don't think RBI throws me out, because RBI says, no, it's not my business. And right from the beginning, if you see even the CEO choice, now if you're a banker, you send 3. I'm talking about the private sector. Public sector is a different issue altogether, because now the Banks Boards Bureau is there and the interviews, etc. It's apparent, it's more transparent than what is used to happen in the past. But in private sector, you send three names, and does RBI get into the efficiency factor there? No. A, B, C. If the A fits, follows the fit and proper criteria of Reserve Bank of India, RBI will tick mark A. B, C, probably B is more competent, C is even more competent, but RBI will not look into B and C. If the RBI looks into only the fit and proper, whether the CEO should be there. So that's also, here is a regulator, and I don't know, probably it's a global thing. Regulator's business is not to look at the inefficiency of the bank. Second part of is this, when you actually are compromised with the misgovernance issues, what happened in Yes Bank and what happened in also in the two recent cases, ICICI. I think Reserve Bank of India was in the know. It was closing the loop. But it was giving a long rope. Now, one way of looking at it is this: Reserve Bank of India, and rightly so, it is concerned about financial sector stability. Certainly, a bank of the size of Yes Bank, which was 3 trillion plus, or ICICI Bank much larger, certainly you come out and make adverse comment and all. There could be run on the deposits, so on and so forth. So that's the logic, or that's the defense of the regulator. That look, we are on the ball, we know it, but you need to give us time. Because it can't be done overnight. It's such a large entity. There could be a systemic chaos. The financial sector stability will be a threat. But the key question is, how long will be the long road? How long you will wait? You are in the know, that's fine. But should you be faster? Should you actually stop giving such a long rope? At the same time, nobody is asking you not to care for financial sector stability, not to make sure that there should be a run on the bank, so on and so forth. I think probably Reserve Bank of India needs to be little more less tolerant for misgovernance, even though I'm pretty sure that it knows what's happening. But it probably gives more time than it should give. It should close the cases faster.
So you skipped the boards in between. So I think you talked about the auditors and the rating agencies almost being, how should I put it, not just negligent, but almost not just callous or negligent, but probably also being a part of that problem. And you talked about the RBI, which could have taken action earlier, but did take time. How about the boards?
No, let me correct you. I have never been on any board. I'm an advisor. I'm sort of an advisor, a senior advisor, strategy at one bank, and now just as advisor, senior advisor. So not on the board. But there are boards and
members, right? You would have spoken to many people who would have been on the boards of these institutions while all of this was going on.
Otherwise, even if I'm not associated with the boards, meaning even if I'm not associated with other banks also, but I'm fairly familiar with how the boards run. I think there are boards and there are boards.
Yeah.
I would like to believe that the quality of boards is not always good. I mean, not only in terms of quality, but also in terms of ethics and governance. In many of the cases, particularly, I don't want to cite any instance, etc. If you are a board and you are questioning certain things and all, the promoter, if the promoter is the CEO, he may not like it, and he may make sure that after 3 years you don't get another term. So at best, he has the tolerance for 3 years if you are too questioning and too finding fault with the thing and all. So that's, and then of course the quality of boards, those people, should they be there or not? Do they have the right kind of vision, etc., etc. So very often, I think, it's in the public domain, the case of ICICI board. ICICI board not only tolerated Chanda Kochar, but also defended her. The former chairman openly defended her. So that says enough. What to talk about? I mean, what is the quality of the board? But is this the case with every bank? Certainly not. Yeah. But I would like to believe, there are in public sector. This is a different story altogether. Many of the board members probably should not be there because their ability to contribute to the vision and the way forward for the bank, not exactly everybody is qualified to do that, but there are other consideration work there. In private sector, I think as I discussed with what happened during the Chanda Kochar regime, I think some of the banks have competent board and independent board, but many of the banks do not have, and the so-called independent members, are they independent? I don't know. So it's basically the promoters run over it. The board is there, but and I'm sure Reserve Bank of India also aware of it.
Yeah. And on that subject of what you talked about, I think we'll go back to the theme, the literary theme that we started with, which is the hero. So every tragedy is also a tragedy because there is a hero, or in this case maybe multiple heroes. And you have a chapter which is called Fallen Angels, and you talk about individuals. So what do you think is the leadership gap, like just very specifically a few things that can be done to address that?
So Shinjini, I don't think in any other industry the leader is as important as in bank. Like for instance, yes, I have seen in the recent past, like one FMCG entity or somebody gets a new CEO and the stock goes up. That kind of thing happens. But in a bank, the investors, primarily the investors, I'm not talking about the depositors, and in private sector I'm talking about, they go by the banker, not the bank. Who runs the bank? And this is the global phenomenon. The leader, the CEO or the MD is larger than the bank itself. And this is particularly true, the psyche of the investors. They don't invest in a bank. They invest in Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C, because they think they have the. I think that is, and when you are, that's the basic difference between banking and any other industry there. And then that is one part of it. And then second is that you are dealing with money. So that is the issue where I think the fault line lies there. Not too many people actually keep their ethics, integrity, and everything is in place because there are multiple way of you express yourself, and that the so-called hamartia is there. So Rana Kapoor is a classic case. How he turned into from Yes Bank, he made it to My Bank, and then No Bank. Okay, so he became he got into a new business model, lender of the last resort. Now, had there been any board, meaningful board, could he get away doing this? No. So there was board was there, but board was not there at the same time. It's a one-man show. Now, similarly, what happened in ICICI also. So, but there are other characters also. Again, I don't want to name them. You will find them. They're extremely modest. They are they don't like. For instance, just to give a example of one bank, I'm not naming. The previous MD, when they used to come, there will be people on walkie-talkie every moment that coming 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, and then all roads clean, and then the goes to the straight to the lift is waiting, and there. But then you find the other person who has replaced the old one is that he comes, nobody knows when this person is coming, and joins the lift with everybody else after 5 or 6 people or 10 the long queue, and when they say, sir, please, you come in, no, I'm fine with them. So there are characters, but actually I think once you have the investors eating out of your hand, once you are dealing with money, and once you are identified and becoming more than the brand of the bank, you are a larger brand. I think sometimes it becomes difficult for that entity to remain rooted and care for ethics and governance. It happens. Sure, that's what in Indian politics. That's what.
No, and that's a very important point, and we will take audience, and it's a brilliantly described in your book. But I agree. It's both are, it's two sides of the same coin. The fact that because that individual is very important, his probity, his or her probity and integrity is very important because they're almost custodians of that fiduciary duty, right? So that's the reason that there is an importance. But then if it ends up getting vitiated, then you have consequences. But at the same time, yes, like you described, if there are good bankers, then that also leads to positive outcome. So while we have questions, I wanted to ask you a very quick question before we go to audience questions. And that is a question that I get asked a lot. How do you see the future of banking with all this new technology and new technology players and, almost the paradigm shift?
It's a big challenge. I think it's a very different kind of challenge. The challenges which the banks had gone through in the past, like say if you look at this, go back in the 90s, this was competition and computerization. Private banks coming and computerization coming. Trade unions are not holding the hands of the management. So that was the 90s problem. 2000, in the first decade, the problem of growth, the exuberance and credit growth 30% odd between 2006 and 2008. Then the Lehman came, etc. And then in the last decade was indiscriminate lending, not caring about risk management, monitoring, so on and so forth. But the current situation is very, very different. Now the two big headwinds for the Indian banking system, and for that matter globally, but more so in India, is the markets, the greater disintermediation of the market. So then NBFCs had an advantage over banks because the good, well-managed NBFCs can raise cheaper money than banks, and they don't have the capex on branches, they don't have the SLR, CRR, their operational cost is much lesser than the banks, etc. That's one part of it. And other part of it, which is more important, is the fintech. And that fintech is taking over. Is a real challenge for the bank, not only on the lending side, even on the deposit side. Like for instance, now the platforms are raising deposits. Of course, they are raising deposits on behalf of certain banks. But then you and me, probably in Mumbai or Delhi, we know this thing. But in the rural, semi-urban areas and all, they will identify the interest rate offered on the deposits with the platform, not on the bank. So probably we'll see that X platform is offering 6% and that becomes the benchmark. Others will not be able to offer less than 6% because nobody will go to the bank then. So I think what we are seeing, some of the banks will have existential crisis, and RBI probably need to think of an exit policy.
So I'm going to, in fact, you're exactly on point. Aarti Mohan on YouTube has asked exactly this question, which you are describing, which is what's your take on other banking solutions like fintech and crypto and on their regulation? So specific, because you've answered the fintech part, any specific view on crypto? That's the hot topic right now. I know that we have enough in the public domain from the governor, but anything you want to add?
It's a very interesting story. I mean, let's not repeat entire thing. There's an interministerial committee led by the former bureaucrat Mr. Garg, where Reserve Bank of India, SEBI, all were on that particular committee. And that committee in no uncertain term recommended banning crypto. It was supposed to be picked up in the budget session of Parliament. It has not happened. And why did the committee recommend banning? Because crypto is definitely not a currency. Fiat, it's not it can't compete with fiat currency. It is not a currency. Is it an asset? No. Is it a commodity? No. It's just but a gambling. Where people can make money, people can lose money. And so we did not take action. The government did not pick it up on this thing. Now it will be probably discussed and then the discussion have started, and probably in this current session of Parliament we'll look for it. But by the time, I think we have allowed this to spread like wildfire, not only in metros and large cities, but even in the rural areas. There are various numbers are coming up. I think last count they're talking about 10 crore people have invested some 6 trillion rupees. Reserve Bank of India governor said, no, this is exaggerated numbers. But the fact is, it's like a wildfire. we have allowed to spread like this for whatever reasons. I'm not privy to it. So it's too late to stop it, because at what cost? I mean, can you ban it? Probably not. So how do you regulate it? Certainly, it's not a currency. I think certainly it's not a commodity. It will probably, we will figure out how to do this is a sort of asset kind of thing, and some kind of regulations are coming. But I have my apprehensions about. I have my sympathy for the investors. People are. My understanding is not only the retail investors, even large family offices of corporations also have invested large money, etc., etc. So we need to see, but it's not a very happy situation. That's all I can. It's nothing but a gambling, and there are so many I just need a 30-second. There is so many miscommunication is being spread. People are they are being confused with the crypto and blockchain. Blockchain is the technology. Nobody has any problem with the blockchain. Blockchain is welcome. Blockchain can be used for multiple purposes. It's a great technology, but blockchain and crypto are not synonymous. That's one miscommunication has been being spread continuously. Second is crypto is synonymous with central bank digital currency. It's completely different. Central bank digital currency is nothing but an app. It's a wallet. It is not, you can't make money on central bank digital currency, but people are talking about it. Why RBI is not coming out with central bank digital currency to tackle crypto? It's not a substitute for crypto. So there are misinformation campaign happening. There are vested interest because money is involved, and being a banker and ex-central banker, that money flows wherever there is less regulation. That's what we are seeing.
Less regulation, opportunity to make short-term gains, etc. We can continue that crypto conversation later privately. I have to ask you a question on behalf of Samruddhi, who wants to know is frozen through no fault of their own when there's a bank scam. How can there be swifter resolution for them? Can some stronger or more effective regulation be put in place to protect the innocent depositor? Very fun.
One thing already happened is this, the DICGC, the cover has been raised from 1 lakh to 5 lakh. That's a big thing happened. I think after a long period, that's one part of it. And depositors have not lost money.
Just to clarify to people that 5 lakh is per bank per depositor. So if you have 5 lakh in 3 different banks, then each bank will give you 5 lakh back. DICGC will give you.
Yes, or for that matter, in the same bank, if I can have 4 accounts. For me, 5 lakh, my wife is the second person. For wife, 5 lakh, I am the second person. For my son, 5 lakh, my wife is the second person. For my daughter, 5 lakh, I am the second person. So not nominee, I'm just saying the joint holder, second.
Yeah.
So there are ways. A, we need to be choosy which bank to put in money. And B, we need to probably split the money if we are taking we think that there's a bit of risk involved. So let's not put 25 lakh at one deposit. Let's split it into 5 deposits. So Reserve Bank of DICGC Act has been amended. It's up to 5 lakh. It's 5 times more than what it was. And they are like everywhere you're not losing money, like LVB, Lakshmi Vilas Bank being merged. Yeah, the 81 bondholders, that's a separate story. They run the risk of losing money in such cases, but the depositors have been protected. And PMC also now being revived it will be through a merger with a new SFB that's a come. So I would like to believe they will get their money back, but not at one shot. Not at one shot. There will be time, over a period of time, they will get the money. But we need to be careful. And yeah, that's it.
Sure. Sumaid on Facebook wants to know something about, because of which I think you wrote this book. People ask why in the large banking net, little people suffer and the larger fish get away. I don't know if that's your conclusion, or if you think the larger fish also have suffered.
Yeah, larger. No, it's always the thing that if you get 200 crore, you have taken 200 crore, then it's the bank's headache, and if you have taken 20 lakh, it's your headache. people will choose you because individuals are softer target. It's much easier to manage individuals. Larger corporations have different connectivity and different pockets of influence, so on and so forth. But I think this is true globally also. How you, I mean, can I leave the country and get into US or some other place and leaving the country forever? I can't as an individual, but the industrialists can do. You call them soft target, you call whatever it is, but I think the bankers are more challenged to tackle the bigger ones. It's not that they are giving they go easy on them, but it's much more difficult, much more challenging tackling the larger corporation, the rogue borrowers I'm talking about.
Sure.
But the prima facie, we feel that you and me, the individuals, are softer target.
Yeah, and you talked earlier about what happens to shareholders, what happens to taxpayers, what happens to depositors, and definitely there are very many ways in which what happens to economic growth, very many ways in which this comes back to haunt the common person. So obviously, which is why all of us are vested in the system. So there's one question here which I think I can speak through. It says it's from Herschel on Instagram. Shouldn't finance awareness be part of curriculum for school days so normal consumers' antenna can go up if something is looking not quite right? And I think that's one of the things that I agree that we don't really do a good job of. And not just here. My son went to the US to study, and he's a economics, etc. student, and everybody learns like very big concepts, microeconomics, macroeconomics, and everything. But literally, how it affects you is the gap that the education system doesn't address. And part of the reason we started to build SALT was because of this concern. But what's your take on this?
No, definitely. But I mean, we are this financial literacy is not as much as should be, but definitely, of course, it is far higher than what about say a decade back, because the Bank of India has been continuously, I must laud the central bank. If you see the advertisements, etc., they are off late they have been doing. And before that, Dr. Reddy, who coined the term financial inclusion, Dr. Subbarao, he went for village adoptions and going to interior India with his people, etc., etc. So there have been continuous efforts by the regulators and by other constituents of financial literacy, but definitely it's not enough. We need to more. Should it be a part of the school curriculum? Why not? That's the thing. And which is why all the more crypto is a dangerous phenomenon in India, where you don't have financial literacy, where you don't know where to keep your money. You just go for crypto and lose your everything. I mean, those who can afford to lose some money, 5% or 2% of their thing, which they don't care for, that's fine. But otherwise, those who are even have a very small, low income group, they are putting in their savings in crypto and trying to become rich overnight. There's no basis to it because there's no asset.
So in fact, Tamal, that is part of the literacy issue, right? Because you can't close your eyes to something that is happening. You need to know more. I always say this, fear is always fear of the dark. When you flash the light on it, the fear reduces. So I think fundamentally the idea is to be able to know more, but how do you do that? And who is the vested party in making you know more when the system is in many ways benefiting from your ignorance on deposit rates, your ignorance on credit card APRs and things like that. There is one question which is a very interesting question, Tamal, and it's for you. It says, which country has banking systems that we can emulate in India that would meet the needs of a country of such extremes? It's from Bhupinder Singh on Instagram, and I think it'll have to be our last question because everybody's winking at us.
I'm afraid I'm not qualified to answer because different countries have different like for instance, should corporations be allowed to float banks? There's no uniformity across the globe. In Japan, you find that all the electronic goods guys own banks, but that's not the case in US. So whether it's a depositor's protection or who will float the bank and what is the banking system like, a different country has different laws, norms. I'm not very sure, and different countries also goes through the bad patch. Like US started the Lehman crisis 2008. We call it global financial crisis, but many, actually Dr. Rakesh Mohan, former RBI Deputy Governor, said, why do you involve the globe? It's a transatlantic crisis. It's the transatlantic nations that they created the crisis. So every country grows through. It's not that India is unique when we find this kind of AQR. AQR is unique for India, but the banking system is under threat and resurrection. It happened across the globe. But one thing is for sure is this: in India, we need more financial literacy, which Shinjini has hinted at. We need to be financially literate. And B, we need more banks. Definitely. I mean, how the banks will compete with fintech, that's a separate story altogether. But definitely, if you see the number of banks and despite the stupendous success of PMJDY, I think 38 odd crore new deposits have been opened, etc., etc. But still, there's a huge market and is a credit staff market. Even in urban India, in Mumbai, you will see that our support service, like the drivers, maid, cook, dog walkers, gardeners, etc., etc., can they get into any bank or get a credit? No. I mean, they're so intimidated by the bank branches, they can't go. So there's a huge scope for credit growth in that segment. There's a huge market, and we need many more banks.
Yep. Thank you for saying that, Tamal, because I think that goes to the heart of the matter. That if you constrain supply, then obviously supply side has dominant power because demand is inelastic for something like banking services, right? Both on credit side as well as on the liability side. So I think that is a very fundamental challenge to address. And I'm glad that licensing norms have also changed over a period of time. And, I hope that we will see better. So my time is up. I think our questions are up. I will have to close the session now. And thank you everyone for joining. It's been such a pleasure to have this conversation, Tamal. I just wish that we had more time because I have many more questions and I wanted to get your insights on many more things. But it's been wonderful to meet and fellow literature student and talk on this wonderful subject. For me, reading the book has been a lot of going down the memory lane in my own career, going backwards, but it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining. Would you like to say anything? Last words, Tamal?
Yes, last word is this. Thanks, Shinjini, for reading the book thoroughly and praising it. So I have a vested interest when you talk good things about the book. I mean, I get the benefit. More people read the book.
Should buy it and read it. It's important.
And thanks, Tata Literature Live. Thank you for it's an honor and privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bandyopadhyay and Ms. Kumar, for this compelling conversation. Pandemonium, the Great Indian Banking Tragedy, is available at our knowledge partner, landmarkxcite.com. Thanks to our audience for joining us today and for participating by sending in all your questions. Thank you to our partners without whom none of this would have been possible. This session was presented by Prime Securities. Tata Literature Live, co-sponsored by Tata Steel and Tata Projects and powered by Godrej, continues with many more conversations, workshops, and engagements. Do check out our website for the full schedule. Have a lovely day ahead.